Welcome, everyone, to the Elokuz podcast. Today is a great day. We will begin the eighth discourse, a new discourse, the eighth discourse. Eight is above limitation and boundaries. It's the miraculous domain. And we are beginning the eighth Maamor, which is called Mimana Afar Yakov. And this is class number 1 in the Maamor Mimana Afar Yakov. Okay, I just want to finish up. The last class, I rushed a little bit. We're going to finish class, just a little touch. We didn't learn the kitzur yet. We didn't learn the summary yet of chapter 28 of the discourse, which is the conclusion of the 7th discourse. And then we'll start the new discourse. And the last class that we gave, which was class number 15 in the last Maamor, which was called Zos Chukas. Over there, I was just rushing at this point because I wanted to finish it. He was answering the question, why does it say 2 times by the red heifer, by the paraduma, why does it say 2 times Havaya? That Hashem, it says that God spoke, and then it's that Hashem commanded, and it doesn't say that I commanded. So the point over here that I didn't so strongly emphasize is that the one that is speaking is not actually the same one. It's one God, but because it's 2 manifestations, the one that is communicating with Moshe is the Yud Kei Vav Kei, is God's name on a much lower level. It's coming from the divine attributes that are already in an express state, the divine attributes that are already in a manifest state. But when it says through this mitzvah, the red heifer that we discussed, precisely because the red heifer represents the concept of tshuva, repentance, from someone who is far away, someone who is returning from a distance. That's why the red heifer was done outside of the of the camp, which is representing distance. And when that person comes back and reconnects to God, that is much higher than the ordinary observance of Torah and mitzvot. And because of that reason, it reaches in and touches God on a much higher level. It engages the 10 sfirot, but the 10 sfirot on the highest of levels. On which level? Where the 10 sfirot are still embedded in the Or Ein Sof. And that's the meaning. Zos chukas haTorah asher tziva havaya. Even though Havaya is which means Ashatziva Havaya, that Havaya commands, but even though Havaya is talking, the answer is the Havaya that's talking is much lower than the Hatziva Havaya that God commanded that it's referring to, because it's precisely in this mitzvah that we're connecting to the tetragrammaton, the name of God, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, which represents the 10 sfirot in their most quintessential state, in their highest level, when they're still in their origins of origins, embedded in the Or Ein Sof. That was one interpretation. And then even deeper than that, it could be that he says, and we did this so quickly in the end, so we didn't have time to elaborate, that when it says, Zois chukas haTorah asher tziva havaya, that it's not even referring to the 10 sfirot when they are in the Or Ein Sof. That too is magnificently high, but even higher than that. Perhaps it's referring to, he says, the Or Ein Sof that is completely above the 10 sfirot. The Or Ein Sof, which is the higher level of Or Ein Sof, the level of Sfiros Ein Kates, which that is, he says, also called Havaya, but it's the higher Havaya, it's the Havaya which is later, which becomes the source of the Sovev, of the encompassing lights, which is the original revelation of the Or Ein Sof. And that, of course, is infinitely above the ordinary level of Havaya that is usually speaking, which, number one, it is Sfirot, its attributes. We say it's attributes. It's God, but it's God when he is manifesting in attributes, and not only manifesting in attributes, but manifesting in expressed and revealed attributes, not in the attributes that are still embedded in the Ein Sof. And here we're saying, and that's the reason that Havaya can't say that I am commanding, because the commanding is coming from a way higher level than that Havaya. Not only is it the Or Ein Sof, but it's the higher level of the Or Ein Sof. The Or Ein Sof, even prior for it than it formulating the 10 Sfiros Hagnuzos. That is the last point I wanted to make to complete the explanation on the discourse Zos Chukas. And now let's just learn the Kitzer, which is the summary. This summarizes chapter 28. In chapter 20, and we're going to be starting the 8th discourse, which has one paragraph, and then it continues with chapter 29 that we're going to be doing in today's class. But let's first do a quick Kitzer. Kitzer is a summary. Tzimtzum, and the Tzimtzum, he explains the contraction. In the last chapter, we were learning how we downgrade from the Orein Sof and how we develop the Kav. In between, there is a Tzimtzum. The Orein Sof is the infinite light. The Kav is what reveals itself after the Tzimtzum, the beam of light. And in order to get from the Orein Sof to that Kav, in between there's a Tzimtzum. And we learned in this last piece that Tzimtzum entails within itself two stages. One stage is to realize and bring forth the 10 Sfiros HaKnuzos, to highlight them as something, as a nekuda, as a point. Right? Because the 10 Sfiros HaKnuzos are initially, the 10 hidden Sfiros are not even noticed. They're completely lost in the infinity of the Ein Sof. So in order to first give them some kind of a presence, there has to be a complete shutdown of Orein Sof, what we called Orein Sof A, the higher level of Orein Sof, so that we can reveal what he refers to as Malchus, the Ein Sof, or the Hashara, the estimation of the world. It's still Ein Sof, but Ein Sof conditioning itself to shine and to reveal itself to within a finite structure, which is within the 10 spheres. And that highlights the 10 hidden spheres. And then comes the second part of the Tzimtzum, which is only B'derech Miyut, which is only a reduction, because the initial a revelation of these 10 spherot, when it's in Malchus, the Ein Sof, are all 10 of them together. And in that state, these 10 spheros are number one, each of them are on a very, very, very lofty level, not ready at all to reveal themselves to creation. Number two, they're not even differentiatable. They're all one. You can't even differentiate one from the other. So now we have to break them out, that they should come forth each one individually, which is to reveal Nekudas HaChachma, which is the first Nekuda that reveals itself, which is the beginning of the Kav. Let's read it. Tzimtzum, and the Tzimtzum is Alam or Orein Sof. The higher level of the Orein Sof has to be hidden. V'nishar b'chenas, and the V'nishar b'chenas ha'ashara. And what's left over is only the estimation of where God is estimating 10 Sfirot, or Hashara on the worlds. He's estimating the worlds, which he will then reveal himself to them through 10 Sfirot and not infinite Sfirot. Shehu kinekuda, which that's called only like a little dot, lagabe or Ein Sof. And that dot is called the Malchus of the Ein Sof. Or Bechinas Acharona, we refer to it, he brings from Lakuti Torah earlier, of the Ein Sof. That's stage number one. Stage number two, it's two points on what is being revealed. After the first phase of the first Tzimtzum, you get the final dot of the Ein Sof. And then you need another Tzimtzum to produce the first dot of the Kav. The Netzla HaChachma. And now the Chachma Netzla becomes emanated, Shehu Nekuda HaRishayna, which is the first point, the his galos of revelation. The Yeshba, in order to produce these two dimensions, first, the last point of the Kav. Of the Orein Sof, the last point of the Orein Sof, and then to reveal the first point of revelation, that itself takes two tzimtzumim. Number one, silica Orein Sof, the complete removal of the original Orein Sof. And then the second one is, once you have that down to a point, what happens next? Umiyah or. Then you have to shrink that light, not remove it completely. Umiyah or, and a reduction of the light. The nishar ba, what's left over is the first nakuda of chachma. But in addition to that, will be roishem or inside. There will also be in this chachma will remain a roshem, a trace, not only from all 10 spheros when they were together, but even a roshem, even a mark of the original Orein Sof. The Yeshloimar, and he said, we learned that's the mark of Orein Sof, that is in Chachma. In Chachma where? Chachma of the beginning of the Kav, but also in Chachma of Atzilus, much further down when the Kav finally develops and emanates lights of Atzilus. So in the Or HaChachma of Atzilus, in it is, we learn, is the revelation of Or Ein Sof. That's the mark of the original Or Ein Sof. And then even further we learn that in every single neshama, in the Chachma of the neshama dwells the Or Ein Sof. So it's all now, based on this idea, which idea? That there were in order to bring forth the kav, we have to have a double tzimtzum. One is a complete removal, and the other one is not a removal, but rather a taking a potential and expressing it, which involves a reduction, but not a complete removal. It's because of these two tzimtzumim, which will therefore give us an understanding of the double or contradictory statements we make about the kav, character of the kav. On the one hand, we say about the kav that it is something totally new. It's yesh me'ayin. It doesn't, you can't, if you look for the kav, if you're going to look for the kav in the Or Ein Sof, you're not going to find it. It's like a totally new phenomenon. On the other one, we say it's a Gilu Yahelim. It's a revelation of what was there. It's just coming forth and bringing forth potential. And the answer is both are true. When we are talking about the kav in relationship to Or Ein Sof itself, the infinite, pure Or Ein Sof, in that level, there's no 10 hidden spheros. There's nothing. There's all there is Or Ein Sof. So the kav, which is already a beginning of 10 spherot, is a yesh me'ayin, is something from them. However, since in the Or Ein Sof there is the lowest nakuda of the Or Ein Sof, which emerges only after the first half of the first phase of the first tzimtzum, then there is that idea that the Or Ein Sof can now emanate 10 spheros. So to that level of the Or Ein Sof, for it, the kav is just a Gilu Yahelim. It's just revealing what was concealed. It's there already. It just needs to emerge out into the open. It's the 10 spheros are there, but they're not felt because they're all one big mush, if you might say, or they're so abstract that you don't see them. And that's why the kav is Gilu Yahelim. Legabe what? Legabe shorshei oiros. If you're comparing it to the root of the lights, it is a Gilu Yahelim. The yesh me'ayin, but it's a yesh me'ayin legabe Or Ein Sof. To the Or Ein Sof itself, shenistalik, that departed, v'nisha rak roishem ba'akav, and a mark of it is there in the kav. To that level of the Or Ein Sof, it is yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. Ulafizeh, and now he says in the parentheses, ulafizeh, and based on that, yitztak, it's going to be justified, gam l'shita zu, also to this shita, shehakav koisher mechaber. We said that the kav plays two roles. Number one, the kav is the measuring. It's the measuring stick. It measures and it delivers to every single level later in the world, in the whole evolution of worlds. The kav is releases to each world and to each sphera its measured amount of particularized energy that fits the needs of that particular world or that particular sphere or that particular whatever. And on the other hand, we say that the kav unifies everything together. It's the soul that unifies and brings harmony and unification to all of existence. So how can one kav both differentiate and unify? The answer is, in as much as the kav itself is concerned, if the kav would only be operating with its powers of what it is for itself, then it would be only a measuring element, and it would be only a differentiator, and it would be only a setting the limits and the boundaries and the definitions of everything. But since the kav includes within itself a mark of the pure Or Ein Sof, which in front of it everything is nothing, since the Kav is connected to that mark of the Or Ein Sof, which is infinitely above all the details. For that reason, the Kav has a quality to override all the differences and to equalize all the differences in all of existence and bring everything to bow down in front of God himself, the Or Ein Sof. And as a result of that, for all these different powers and elements to all harmonize and unify together and become one. And with all of this, will also be explained. Pasuk Zois Chukas HaTorah, the Pasuk Zos Chukas HaTorah, in which he answered all the questions that we had in the last two classes, class number 14 and class number 15 of the last Maamor. Based on this, we completed right now Mazel Tov class number 7. Maamor number 7, discourse number 7, and we are now beginning discourse number 8. And here we go. This one is on Parshas Balak, and it's fitting very beautifully because right now we are in Parshas Balak. When remember, every discourse has an introduction with questions relating to the parsha of the week, and then he gets into the meat and potatoes of the continuation of the themes that he's discussing. And miraculously, every time he manages to tie that particular discussion that he's talking about and find it in the weekly parsha. It blows my mind every time. Here we go. Afar Yakov. There's a verse. This verse is in the blessings that a wicked anti-Semite prophet was trying to that were delivered. He blessed the Jewish people unwantingly. The wicked Bilam wanted to curse them, and God switched the curses to blessings. One of those blessings that he says is Afar Yakov. He's trying to express how the Jews are so numerous they cannot be counted. And the way he expresses it in some kind of a poetic double phrasing. He says, Afar Yakov, who can count the dust of Jacob? Well, Mispar, and can count as Reuven Yisroel. Now, Reuven, we're going to see what that means, but now we're going to translate it as one of the divisions of the Jewish people, of Israel. So who can count the dust of Jacob? Who can count a division of Israel? What does it mean, a division? So we know simply the Jewish people were divided into 4 camps, 12 tribes. And those 12 tribes, each 3 tribes together, when they were in the desert, sheared one area, one direction to the side of the Mishkan, to the side of the tabernacle. And they all had banners. 3 tribes together sheared one general banner. Each tribe had their own banner, but they were all part of a greater banner. That's called a division. And that's also because there are 4 divisions, 4 camps of the Jewish people. Each camp contains 3. 4 times 3 is 12, 12 tribes. And that's the meaning of who. So now we express, we need to understand. How do we understand the second half of this verse? Pirush umispar es Reuven, and count the division. What does that mean? Ima kavana sheyesh mispar, is the intention is that there is a number, or is it a continuation of the wonder of who can count? Shelo yesh mishpar, there isn't a number. Meaning to say like this: when you're reading this verse, who can count who can enumerate? Let's use 2 different words so it's easier, because the Torah uses 2 words, mana, and the other one is mispar. So let's count. Let's read for the word mana. Let's translate it as enumerate, and mispar and count. Okay, so let's read it like this: who can count? Sorry, again I was wrong. Who can enumerate the dust of Jacob and count the divisions of Israel? The division of Israel. So the simple way we would read it, anybody would read it. The first, the more obvious interpretation to this is that in both phrases of this sentence, who can, will apply. It's as if it would read like this: Mi mana Afar, who can enumerate the dust of Jacob, and who can count the divisions of Israel. That's how everybody reads it in its first reading. However, the Rebbe says, the Rebbe Rashab says, analyzing this a little more carefully, not necessarily you read it that way. The me, the who, is only stated in the beginning of the sentence, which means the notion that it's not countable is felt much stronger in the beginning of the sentence, that the dust of Jacob is not countable. Second half, umispar, which in English translates and count. It doesn't say and who can count. It just says and count, which could be understood that you could count it. In other words, who says that the word who can, applies to the first half of the verse and to the second half of the verse? Maybe the first half of the verse is, the dust of Jacob is not countable. Who can count it? You're wondering. And the second half of the verse, which it says umispar, doesn't mean you can't count. You could count. Umispar as Reuven Yisroel, and count, which means because it is countable. The division of Israel is countable. Or maybe not. Maybe the word mimana, who can count, is extending to the entire sentence. And like I said, that's the simple meaning. That's what it seems like. Who can enumerate and who can count. So he's saying, it seems like, now, the fact that the Torah didn't repeat the word me a second time is because the Torah is leading us to understand that the non-countability of the Jewish people, the non-ability to count them, the impossibility of counting them is stronger by the dust of Jacob than by the division of Israel. The very fact that by division of Israel, it doesn't say who can count, it just says count, which lends itself to read that counting this is possible. Therefore, you have to say that the division of Israel might be closer to being able to be counted than the dust of Jacob. So based on that, he's going to ask another question. Well, we always know that Jacob is a lower level than Israel. And the fact that you can count something means it's inferior. So who's inferior, Jacob or Israel? Jacob is inferior. So Israel, we should say, for sure no one can count anything that relates to Israel, because Israel is very high. Yisroel is a very high name. Yisroel, the word Yisroel has within it the word Rosh, head. Yakov, the Hebrew word Yakov, has within it the words heel. Heel means the low. We always know that ordinary Jews are called Jacob, and more elevated Jews like great rabbis and the righteous and the saintly, they're called Israel. So if we're trying to say that they're so great you can't count them, and not counting over here doesn't only mean in numbers. Not counting over here means in terms of you can't grasp them. They're so high. So Israel should be far more outside the realm of counting than Jacob. And yet, from the way the verse puts it, it seems to be the reverse. The reverse is true. Jacob is a given. Yakov is a given. For sure we can't count. Mimana, who can count? When it comes to Israel, we can read it like this and we can read it like that, which means the non-countability of it is maybe yeah, maybe not. So that's the question he's asking. We need to understand what does it mean? Does it mean that there is a number? Or it's a continuation. But you can't count. There isn't a number. And then first of all, he asks, which one is it? Secondly, he makes the question now. Isn't Israel much higher than Yakov? Can you do as it is known? So why by Yakov, by Jacob, who can count? The pashut, the pshata pashut, which the simple meaning of that everybody understands is shalo yesh mispar, is that there is no number at all. V'gabi Yisroel, and by Israel ksiv mispar, which lends itself to interpretation that you could count. It doesn't make any sense. If anybody is off the charts, it's Israel, not Jacob. And yet, by Jacob, we're implying that they're off the charts. And by Israel, it seems like they are somehow maybe just a tiny bit off the charts. A little bit on, a little bit off. It's a question. Well, Havin calls that to understand all of this. Yesh lahagdim will first preface, Mashin is bar, the eldest that we explained earlier. Now he jumps right back into the discourse. We explained earlier that the drawing forth of the lights of the 10 spheroids of Atzilus, of the world of emanation, and how these lights are drawn forth from their root and from their source. Which are the 10 hidden spheroids that are hidden in the Orein Sof, who al yadei tzimtzum. The way these lights, first these lights exist completely embedded in the Orein Sof. But in order to be able to bring them out from such a lofty place, you have to have the tzimtzum, like we discussed even today, the 2 stages in the tzimtzum. Bar, and we explained. We said there's 2 contractions. One is to remove the first level of the Orein Sof, which this symptom is a complete removal, like we said earlier. And the second symptom, now, once we exposed already the source of those lights, which are the 10 hidden spheros, standing already as already an entity that can be recognized, a potential for 10 spheros. Now we start the second symptom to bring forth these 10 powers, each one individually. In the root of the lights, when they are still embedded in the Orein Sof, they're all mixed together. This achdus, and they're all unified. 2 problems. Not a problem, but it's 2 qualities. Number one, essentially they're very high, which means the chachma is not really chachma. The chachma is still very, very, the wisdom is very, very infinite. The kindness is not really defined as kindness. Everything is on such a high level. Number one, they're not in a recognizable state. And not only that, when they were, there's another quality. Number one, each one of them is in such a lofty state. Number two, since they were all together, it was shining upon them a much higher light. Remember we said, just like the letters of the word Baruch, when those letters are together, you don't only have a Beis, Reish, Vav, Chav, which each one of these letters has content, its own meaning, but you also have the meaning of the word blessed, which is a higher meaning. Right? And not only that, we said, there is also the power, remember we spoke about this earlier, the power of that combines all the letters together, which is even a higher subconscious power, which combines the letters. Which is the intention that is in the 10 spheres. The tzimtzum, what happened to the tzimtzum is that differentiated them and separated them. They became specified. That one sphere should emerge on their own. This dramatically and drastically reduces the light. And now the chachma, the bays, you can feel the bays. You can see, if you would use an example of words, you can feel the bays, you can feel the reish. You don't only hear the concept of blessing, you can see the letters themselves. In our case, you can see each sphera standing on its own. And that's the process of bringing down these lights, so now they can emerge and become the lights that will illuminate the vessels of Atzilus. And with this we begin chapter 29. Let's just learn one line. And based on this, based on this, we'll understand the enclothement of the lights in the vessels. Once we understand how much the energy was downgraded in order for it to become the lights that will later go into the vessels, we can understand now how they can actually enter the vessels. Because the lights and the vessels really are so far from each other. They're so removed. If there wouldn't have been all these stages of kind of reducing the lights would never be vesselable. The fact that the lights become vesselable and containable into the vessels is precisely because it went through all of this diminishment. as he says over here. Because the lights and the vessels are still very far one from each other. Like body and soul. That they are a body and a soul. We all understand how far they are. You can't compare a physical flesh of a body and bones and flesh. And you can't compare that to its pure spirit, which is the soul. Shanefesh ruchni, the soul is spiritual, vaguf, and the body, huchaymer v'gashmi, is corporal and physical. And the same is in the example. And the lights and the vessels, the lights are considered pure spirit compared to the vessels. Although we're talking about the highest vessels, the vessels of Atzilus, they're considered like physical bodies compared to the lights. And as this idea that the body, that the vessels are called like a body, it says so in the Zohar. Gufin, the Kinas line. The Zohar refers to the Sphirot, the vessels of the Spheros, that it's bodies. Although it's infinitely removed from our kind of bodies, but yet we call it bodies compared to the lights. Nevertheless, notwithstanding this tremendous distance that there is, the lights do become vested in those vessels. It becomes invested, and it gets grasped in those vessels. And the question is, how can that happen? How can these two so far apart entities get married to each other to the point that they become one? How is that possible? And that is because chulu, and that's because the lights themselves are not absolutely pashut. If the lights would not have any flavor or anything, and they would be utterly simple, the vessels would never be able to grasp them. They would be so slippery, so to speak. They would be so abstract, so removed, so unattachable that the vessels couldn't sink their teeth onto the light and grasp it. But because in the most benign, hidden, these lights already have leanings. The lights already have some subtle flavor. The lights themselves are not have the tiniest coloring that you can't notice, but they are already tainted with the smallest taint. That serves as something in the lights, so to speak, a snag in the light, that the vessel is able to grab onto it and hold out that energy down. Because these lights, even when they are in their root, in their source, all the way in the Orein Sof, even in stage number, their first stage, before the Kav, when they're still in the Orein Sof mamish, these lights, they're really 10. Even though they're unified with each other and we don't see their differences, they're so one, all you feel is the Orein Sof, but yet there is already 10 there. He says quickly in the parentheses, of course, not an Orein Sof A, because over there there's no 10 spheres at all. But once there was the alos haratzon, the will, the rising of the will, showing in a hashara, which is the estimation in the Orein Sof, leheir b'mido gvul, to illuminate in a measured manner. He already measures himself to 10, and once he measures himself to 10, those 10 spheres are already present, and the light itself has already that predisposed to these 10 attributes, and for that reason, eventually, when these lights will then drop through the powerful tzimtzumim and be reduced, these lights will now come to a state when the vessels can actually grasp them, crunch on them, sink their teeth into them, and take them in and make them one with the vessel. As we will see in the next class.